Welcome to Breaking into Hollywood and our most persistent, fabulous guest yet, Mr. Tom Schulman. We have had problems with Google. Google, stop playing around. We need to be consistent with all this. Every week they throw something new at us. If you haven't joined us in one of our Breaking into Hollywood's Tuesday Night Live shows before, this is a great opportunity for you to get to know the inside of Hollywood. Gary W. Goldstein, tonight our special guest, Tom Schulman. Fantastic combination. If you have any questions for either of them throughout the show, leave them in the message box and we'll be able to see them and I can bring them up live. And let's get rocking. I'm going to hand over to you, Gary.
Fabulous. Bethan, thank you for saving us and helping Tom. You two, I mean, I would have been lost. But anyway, we are now gathered. So welcome to Breaking into Hollywood, everyone. Good evening. And we do have an amazing guest. Tom Schulman. I'll read you a little bit of background. Tom hails from beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, and he graduated from Vanderbilt, got his BA in philosophy, studied at the USC Graduate School of Cinema, the Actors and Directors Lab here in LA, and also with director Joan Darling. Tom directed the Actors Studio West production of Harold Pinter's The Caretaker, which must be a fabulous story unto itself. Tom wrote Dead Poets Society, for which he received an Oscar and Academy Award. He also wrote What About Bob, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Medicine Man, and Holy Man. He wrote and directed Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag as well. He was executive producer on Indecent Proposal, wonderful film with Robert Redford, as well as Me, Myself, and Irene, which was the Jim Carrey movie, yes?
Yes.
And he was the writer-producer of Welcome to Mooseport as well. Tom co-wrote and co-produced The Anatomy of Hope, a pilot for HBO, which, as I recall, was directed by J.J. Abrams.
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. Tom he's not only, he's got, between his writing, his producing, directing, there's over 20 credits here. It's a big body of work, but he's also served on the board of directors and then as vice president of the Writers Guild of America West. He also served on the board of directors and then as president of the Writers Guild Foundation. I'm tired just reading all of this.
I'm tired listening.
And he's just a puppy and just getting his training wheels off. So anyway, Tom, thank you so much. Welcome. And I love, by the way, on your IMDb, I noticed that we have credits for producer, for director, for second unit director, assistant director, for soundtrack, for thanks, and for self. And I love that under self, you have the 62nd Annual Academy Awards TV special, Himself winner, Best Original Screenplay. I got to tell you, that's just so awesome sauce. So anyway, it's really a great pleasure for you to join us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So, there's a lot. We just read a lot about your background, but I'm always curious, and if you would share just for a moment with our audience a little bit of, sort of, if you will, the origin story of Tom Schulman.
Right. That's a tough one because I wasn't there when I was born. But I started.
As Bill Cosby said, it all began when you were a child.
Yes, it did. I guess I got interested in films my senior year in college. I had been taking a short stories writing class at Vanderbilt, and senior year, a professor gave us the option to either write a term paper about one of the novels we were reading or to make a short film about one of those novels. So, of course, everybody in the class made a short film, myself included, and made a rather lousy little movie based on about John Barth's Lost in the Funhouse. But and I was lost in the Funhouse. Had a great time making that short, and just got hooked on films. Turned out Vanderbilt had an old Aeroflex camera sitting around in the art department, and they've a bunch of short ends and some money toward getting that film exposed or developed. So we went out and made a bunch of us made a short film, and at that point I met up with a gentleman who worked for a company called Image Maker in Nashville that made commercials, industrials. If an ad company needed the sort of southern spin on Coca-Cola, they'd come to us and we'd put a Coca-Cola in a stream and play bluegrass music and that. So, and the guy that shot my short at Vanderbilt said to me, I'll shoot your short, but you have to come to work for me afterwards, which was a great deal. So I went to work for Image Maker for a year, came out here to USC Film School, thought I knew everything. After 2 semesters, quit there, went to a place called the Actors and Directors Lab because I was really looking to learn how to work with actors. I was more interested in directing in the beginning. But soon occurred to me that in order to direct, I was going to have something besides maybe a play, and that would have to be either a book that I optioned, which I couldn't afford, or a screenplay, original screenplay. So I started writing screenplays. I had a great day job. A guy hired me to work for a company that made educational films, and we would make a short film every 3 weeks and then take 2 weeks off. So it was perfect for a writer. And in the middle of that job, our boss walked in and said, I'll pay anybody at the company $4,000 to write a script by the end of the week. This was on Monday. He had come across some investors who wanted to put $100,000 into a low-budget feature. So I said, okay, I'll try that. He said, so what do you want to write? And I said, well, probably should do a horror film if it's going to be that low budget. He said, good idea. You got any ideas? And I said, I used to love those old mummy movies. And he said, all right, write a mummy movie. So, and bring it to me by Friday. So I wrote the mummy movie in 4 days and absolutely exhausted. He liked the script. He took it to his investors over the weekend. On Monday, he came back to work and said, well, they love the script, but they're Mormons, and they can't invest in a horror film. So can you write a family film by Friday? And I said, I'm so exhausted, I can't do this. So he hired another member of his company, a guy named Desmond Nakano, who went on to write Boulevard Nights, to write a movie called The Kid from Not So Big. And about 6 weeks later, we were up on a ranch in Saugus, just north of Los Angeles, shooting this family western called The Kid from Not So Big, and all the Mormon investors were extras on the film. So they came to me one day and said, we liked your mummy movie, but we couldn't do it. Can you write us a comedy? We'll pay you to write a comedy. I said, sure. So I got a friend, and we wrote a sketch comedy similar to Kentucky Fried Movie or Everything You Want to Know About Sex. It was about sports, and we called it Mondo Jocko. And we wrote the script, and the Mormons said to me, we like the script, we want to make it, we understand you want to direct. And I said, I do. And they said, so how about we'll give you a test, you can shoot 1 day. And I said, great. So we went out and we shot a day of Mondo Jocko and screened it for them. They were very excited. They said, we'll make the movie. And that night, the lead producer died. So, and we now sort of went into an early version of turnaround. His wife was now the producer of the movie, and we had notes, and that movie never got made. But those 2 scripts, Sarcophagus, the mummy movie, and Mondo Jocko, became my sort of first 2 scripts with which I got an agent and started sort of working my way through the agent hierarchy and kept writing. So that was my beginning. And I guess I wrote a script called Rampage, which eventually got made into a TV movie called Sins of the Father, and another one called Gladiator, sort of modern day road warrior in LA, that also got made into an ABC movie. And so that sort of paid for me to spend time writing my next script, which I think was Dead Poets Society, which I wrote on spec. And 5 years later it got made.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. And that was a tricky one too, because I finished the script and gave it to my agent, and my agent said, this is one of the best scripts I've ever read. If you want to sell it, you got to get a new agent. And said, there's no way I'm going to be able to sell something with the 3 worst words in the title. You can imagine, Dead Poet Society, all in one title. Plus, it's about a boys' school, and it's all boys, and it's period piece. Who's ever gone to a movie about that? So I kicked around, got another agent, and finally Stephen Haft optioned the script 2 years after that. And Disney had passed on it, I think, twice before that, but they made it. The third time Jeff Katzenberg read it and committed to making the movie.
Where did that story come from? It's such an interesting, complex story.
I was at the Actors and Directors Lab, and our teacher there was a former Broadway and film director named Jack Garfine. Jack's teacher was a famous Broadway director, one of the founders of the group theater, critic for The Nation, named Harold Clurman, who is a force of nature. He would come out about every 6 weeks to review Jack's work, which was in essence our work, the students' work. And Jack would have Harold talk about the scenes that he would see, and Harold would get up, maybe spend 5 minutes talking about your scene, and then launch into a 3-hour discussion of the state of theater and film and novels and history, everything else. He was like a human volcano on stage. And we'd go home that night full of this feeling that we could change the world, and of course wake up the next morning and go, probably not. But in any case, I decided to write a script about him, and it became a script about an acting school. And I quickly realized that every character in all the students were sort of the same character. So what survived from that draft is the character of Neil in Dead Poets Society, the kid who wants to be an actor. But I wrote a kind of quick draft of that. I think it's the only thing I've ever written I threw away because it was so bad. And but a year later, the light bulb went off. Aha, this is going to be about the changes that a teacher causes in his students. And I remembered that I had a great teacher in my sophomore year in high school named Sam Pickering, who had taught at my school 1 year, taught English, very antic, mischievous, great teacher, and thought this is the basic idea. And he had been at the school for a year and then disappeared. And all the next year, rumors abounded that he had an affair with the headmaster's wife or some salacious thing like that. And none of us ever found out what happened to him. Of course, if anybody had bothered to ask, we would have found out he just got a better job. He got a job teaching at University of Connecticut. But I think the fact that sort of remained an open question in my mind sort of set my imagination at work. From that came this teacher, this story, and that's essentially how it started.
Well, we're grateful that you didn't, in fact, know the truth about Sam's ascent to a better job at U of Connecticut.
Yeah.
Because that is, and what a gift from the gods to be exposed over time to Harold Clurman.
Yeah. Oh, amazing guy. Amazing.
A legend amongst legends.
I think I have a picture of him here because I used to keep it right above my desk. This is that's Harold sitting, I think, getting ready to direct a play at the Mark Taper, maybe the late 70s. And he just still one of the brightest people I've ever seen talk, and just would hold you wrapped for 3 hours.
And obviously did so for all the greats of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, he was revered by the inside of the inside. He was just that powerful.
Yeah.
Well, that's brilliant. So it's interesting because you really came to, listening to your description, you came to writing with actually a surprising amount of actual production experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had done, I don't know how many educational films we made at this guy Bill Crane's company, but a lot. Okay. And each one was like a little mini movie. They were anywhere from 8 to 20 minutes long. And then Bill made The Kid from Not So Big, and then he made a couple of other low-budget features too, which I worked on in various capacities. So whether it be, I cast one of them, I was the assistant director on another one, and helped him edit another. So it was a great sort of experience to be able to get to do all that. Never wrote one for him, but that was a good, sort of took some of the mystery of movie making out in a good way.
Between that and the fact that you got to write these, I mean, I think it's also very demystifying to set a goal and actually execute a script in 4 days, not once but twice back to back in different genres. That must there's a certain confidence that must come from just setting your mind to that and saying all things aside, giving up sleep, I'm sure, for a few days. And coming out with something that other people read and would approve and were excited about.
Yeah.
So with that background, I'm curious because I know so many writers for a host of reasons, either just a genuine love of the notion of directing a film, or to sort of protect and serve and protect the integrity and the vision of their actual work, or some combination of the above. A lot of writers think about staying attached to or wanting to direct at some point. What was the experience when you got to because at sort of the major Hollywood level, your directorial debut at that level was Eight Heads in a Duffel Bag, correct?
Right, right.
So,
It's interesting because I think there's obviously more access for writer directors these days. It seems like people who start out writing a script have a much better chance of directing. I remember the first agent I got. I went to based on those 2 scripts I wrote for the Mormons. Was in her office, and she said to me, "So, what's your long-term goal?" And I said, writing wise, and I said, "Well, actually, what I really want to do is direct." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Go look behind that plant in the corner of my office." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Look behind the plant." So I walk over to the corner. There's a large potted plant there. Behind the plant, tacked up on the wall, is this old crumbling little cartoon from a newspaper, and it's a picture of 2 monkeys in the monkey cage hurling feces, I think, and stuff out at the people, the patrons at the zoo. And the caption, one monkey to the other, is, "What I really want to do is direct." I said, "What in the world is this?" And she said, "That's what we think of your chances of directing at this point." I said, "Wow, you've got that ready to go on the wall." And she said, "It's very hard for writers to direct," and she was right about that. But so back then, which was, I guess, the late 70s, early 80s, it was really tough. But by the time I wrote What About Bob and got to know the executives at Disney a little bit better, they actually offered me What About Bob to direct. And the reason was, and they were having trouble closing Bill Murray's deal and were getting very frustrated. And until they closed his deal, they couldn't even go out to directors, and they wanted one. So they said, "How about you direct this?" And I said, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah, you're not going to get to do it with Bill Murray. You're going to have to do it on half the budget. You're only going to get 26 days. And I said, why me? Why now? And they said, "Let's bring out the list of the top 20 directors in Hollywood, and let's look at them." So they bring out a list. They've got one. They said, "Okay, the top 10 directors pretty much always make good movies." And then they went down them name by name, and they said, "Every one of these guys is busy for the next 4 years, so scratch them out." The next guys on the list, maybe they're going to make a good movie, maybe not. Most of them are working anyway, but why would we bring somebody in who we're not sure about when we got you, who we can pay next to nothing and beat up, and you'll do whatever we want? You're our guy. They were surprisingly candid about it. So,
that's very.
And I said, "Well, I said, I got to have more than this many days, and I got to have a bigger budget, and I want to try to do it with Bill Murray." And they said, "Well, that's not going to work, and we insist that you do it with someone else." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to ruin this movie just for a chance to direct it, because Bill's the only guy I see in this part." And they said, "Well, then you can't direct the movie." And I said, "Okay." So it was a 15-minute conversation, and that opportunity went by the by. But that gave me some insight into what's going on at the studio level, because and of course nowadays, with budgets being so huge, it makes it harder. Although they seem to be taking chances on hot commercial directors and so forth, people who show that they can handle the visual razzmatazz that's necessary for some of these larger features. So there's opportunity up and down the budget line at this point, I think.
I would agree. I think it's much more opened up.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a 15-minute conversation, and that opportunity went by the by.
Well, but I give you a lot of credit because, in my experience, Tom, not across the board, but many a writer would have lunged, not just jumped, for the opportunity to step into the director role at a major studio like Disney.
Right.
And would have agreed to terms, number of days, budget cut, different whatever, with that opportunity in hand, and one can only guess at what the result might have been. But
Well,
And
the smarter writer would have said yes, and then just sort of heavens gated them to the place that they needed to be. But I wasn't prepared to do that at the moment. So
yeah, no, yeah, but I still admire it because I think it's a tough call, and you made a call on behalf of the project,
yeah,
um, which is commendable. Um, so that was what that was not. Oh, but by the way, I think it's only fair that I share with the our audience this evening this thing that sort of made me really excited to meet you and that we discussed over lunch, which was that but for you having written What About Bob, the film Pretty Woman would never have. I don't want to say it would never have been made. It would not necessarily have been made at Disney
hmm
under those circumstances, especially with Gary Marshall directing, who was at the time attached to direct What About Bob.
that's right.
So the script for Pretty Woman, then titled 3000, was acquired by the studio to sort of slot into the assembled crew, from director to Laura Ziskin, line producer to et cetera, with the soundstage and fill in that gap while
Right.
the Bill Murray situation was being reconfigured, I suppose, or renegotiated. So it's just a wonderfully delicious set of ironies. One never knows. Life is
hmm
all unknowable circumstance and what's going on behind the curtain. And I think that's actually a good, lesson, if you will, that you can't prejudge. You can never assume much of anything. I mean, you told earlier you were going to make your directorial debut on Mondo Jocko,
Right.
but for the untimely passing of a producer.
Right.
There are so many things, good, bad, and different, that happen along the path.
Yeah.
And you just sort of have to be nimble and respond as things come to you.
Yeah.
But and talk to me just for a moment. I'm fascinated because I confess that I haven't seen it. I want to see Anatomy of Hope. I don't know if that's available on HBO Go or where that might be available, but
No.
no.
I
So
don't think they're going to make the series.
they're not. Okay, that's a shame. But talk to us. I mean, you've done some TV movies, but that was an HBO series with J.J. Abrams. That was a big, that was a delicious sort of uppercase opportunity that pulled you, I would just say, deeper into the realm of TV than you had been, and you'd been involved certainly. How would you describe the difference? Given that you're a very established, very well-respected feature writer, what was that like moving into that level of television?
Well, HBO likes to call itself, it's not TV, it's HBO. So, and I had a writing partner, Rafael Iglesias, on that project, who's a good friend and lives in New York. So we wrote the script together, and then HBO, in its way, I think it was probably 2 years from the time we turned that in to the time that JJ got involved and we started working on that. And I have to say, it was really hard work. I mean, we were prepared to run a series if the pilot was picked up. So they had us writing other episodes while we were casting and prepping that episode. So I got a taste of what it would be like to be a showrunner, and it was not fun. It was really hard work. Made me really appreciate how hard TV showrunners work, because they were probably 110 hour weeks for 7 months, just doing the pilot and writing those other episodes. So I can only imagine what it would be like if you were actually writing an episode, prepping an episode, shooting an episode, and posting an episode all at the same time for 6, 7, 8 months. So it gave me a tremendous amount of respect for that job. I think it's one of the hardest, if not the hardest, jobs in Hollywood. So, and as much as I sort of would like to do that, there's a part of me that's sort of glad I'm not, absent from my own life that long. But on the other hand, they in TV, they actually make things. So in features, it seems like it takes. It doesn't seem. It does take years to get everything going. And you look back, 5, 6, 7 years it takes to get a project going. You watch it being shot, and you wonder, is this really worth it? Whereas in television, it happens or doesn't happen quickly. So. And of course now TV is more of a writer's medium than it used to be, and more of a visual medium than it used to be too. I think television's screens in general have gotten bigger, so one can appreciate the visual elements in a movie and the directorial elements of a TV movie and TV series much more than before. So I'm kind of excited about what's going on in television and thinking about trying to jump in again to do something there.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting visually and in so many, and budget-wise. I mean, the number of high, very respected names from the feature film side, historically feature film people, that have over recent years, crossed over, really crumbled the Berlin Wall, that wall of snobbery that separated the two media for so long.
Some of that has to do with just the dearth of work in features. As you know, the studios are making probably a third the number of features they were making 10 years ago, and all those directors, writers, actors, want to work. So it's an opportunity in TV for that.
Yeah, and it is true that the quantum of work. I have friends who are in the writers' room or are showrunners, EPs, and I am not in the slightest bit jealous of their life, because on the one hand, there is the one side of the creative brain says, oh my gosh, you get to make a film every week or every couple of weeks and put it out for the world to see,
right?
Depending on whether it's half hour or hour. On the other hand, that for so many months out of the year, they're just unavailable to their own life or family or any other pursuit. It's a full-on sprint without respite. Yep. So, but on the other hand, you get to do what you love.
It's my dog going crazy in the background.
Another auteur in the house.
Yes.
Where were we? Oh, yes. So TV. So net, you want to do more TV?
I think so. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to figure out how to do it without working so hard.
Do you have a passion project, Tom, an idea that you really, really want to work on that you've had in your back pocket for a while?
I do. I don't know if it's so much it's in my back pocket, and it's also in the back pocket of a producer, friend of mine, Pam Williams, who used to work for Laura Ziskin. Laura and I were going to do this movie together, and unfortunately she passed away. So her partner, Pam Williams, who produced The Butler since Laura's passing, is going to produce it. So we'll see. I'm hoping it's coming out of the back pocket.
Is that something that you've had working on for a long time?
I've been working on that, I think, since 2007 or 2008.
Okay. So it seems in movie world that isn't a huge amount of time.
It's about average, I think. But I mean, I've only had one movie that I finished writing, I think in August, and it was going before the cameras in January. But that was, that almost never happens.
What was the length of stay for some of these beautiful titles like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Well, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was I rewrote that. I think the team that was putting that movie together was, before they were all let go, I think they spent 2 years on that. And then basically I had a week to rewrite the script, and the movie was either going to be shot or not at that point. So 2 years on that one, I think.
We have a link on that. My dad worked on that movie. He was,
oh, did he?
Yeah, he was location manager.
Wow. Yeah, Mexico, right?
I don't remember. I was a little younger.
I think they were in Mexico City on that, because I said I will not go there. So it was, and I think several people got incredibly sick there. Hopefully your dad wasn't one of them.
Oh,
But
well,
yeah.
that might explain some things. What about that news I heard today about LA dropping rates to film here? Is that going to make a
Yeah.
difference to you guys?
I think so. I mean, it's the one good thing about trying to make lower budget features is that a lot of people who live in LA will cut their rates just to be able to stay at home, and go home every night to their families versus being on location for months at a time. So I think that kind of incentive will if you say they're dropping the location rates.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't read it in details, location rates or taxes on something, or maybe both. But it
I
was
think I
big enough
think the California tax incentive plan has just tripled or quadrupled. So there'll be more money to fund movies and TV shooting in California than before and help keep the industry here. Because other states like Georgia and Louisiana that give big tax rebates are very hard for California to compete with. I
which
mean,
is
you
just
can make
Yeah,
them same. You can make a movie for $10 million here or $7 million, same movie in Louisiana, paying the same rates to cast and crew, but just getting a tax rebate.
yeah. I think Beth, and I think it's going to make a big difference if they follow through on it. I agree with what Tom says. I think a lot of it is very probative to say to someone, you can sleep in your own bed.
Yeah,
Uh, but I
yeah,
think there's also another side to it that, well, you, Tom, Echo, tell me if you agree. Um, Psychologically in this business, for not just the talent, but for their representatives, the agents, the managers, to say, oh, they're going to be local, where they're not taking them out of our jurisdiction, they're not unavailable to us.
right,
They're going to be able to take meetings, be accessible to us. There's an element of psychology that makes them, and maybe you can chunk it down and cut a couple of days off their schedule. But
right.
I think if you and there is so much talent here, we're absolutely missing a huge opportunity not to have more films made here, because as Tom pointed out, the number of films made per annum by each major studio is significantly less than what it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, significantly so. So to the extent that we have all this talent, and not just in front of the camera, but all of the crafts, all of the actors and directors and whatnot, key department heads sitting here who would prefer to work rather than not.
That's right.
You can create a lot of amazing content um, in the indie space, and you've got every facility under the sun here. So it's a
That's
shame. It's a shame that but again, as Tom pointed out, it's very hard to beat when you have very aggressive campaigns, and there are enough states that got into the game, from New Mexico to Georgia, on and on, Louisiana, even
yep.
Made in New York was a good program. I don't know
Right.
what it's right now, but there's so many states vying because they understand the ripple effect on their economy to bring big productions in.
That's
So
right.
it'll be interesting to see the impact.
Yeah. I know a director who shot his movie partially in the United States, partially in India, posted it, part of it in Mexico City, another part of it in New York, and finally the final post in Berlin, all because of incentives. He just ran this poor guy around the world to save money.
Great air miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, he basically went to the dark room with the edit room with a packed suitcase just in case.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's listen, whatever gets you to the promised land
That's right.
is what it takes. That's part of the job definition. You got to be a little bit gypsy to be in the business, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
Can I
So
pop in a
speak.
question? Sorry,
Go
Gary.
ahead. No, go ahead, Bethan.
Can I pop in a question, Tom? With someone who's as respected as you and as uh, successful in so many different genres, do you keep your eye on the new TV, the Sons of Anarchy, the Orange is the New Black, and look for talent there that you may think of transporting to the big screen? Or is that the kind of way people are thinking these days, with the new respect that these TV shows are having?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, I mean, we're sort of all reading the same tea leaves, but it looks to me like the feature film world is keeping its eye on people who get, some fans in the television world, and they'll use that to help to help finance their feature. So you get somebody who's big on one of those shows, and they may help you sell the rights to a certain territory or whatever. So that's the way these things are put together, and it's and studios are looking, because they have what they think of as high concept movies, and they don't think they need big stars necessarily because the concept's going to sell the movie. They're willing to take a chance on talent from some of these TV shows because frankly it saves them a lot of money.
Anybody you've got your eye on that you're willing to say?
No, because if I say, then I create competition. So
yeah. The beauty is it seems to be happening on every. In fact, a friend of ours, Bethan, is in Europe at the moment. Just went from Madrid, Spain, to Frankfurt, Germany, because the Six Sisters are doing a concert in those venues. But they're just one of many acts, and they are all what do they have in common? They're all YouTube acts. So YouTube is basically the YouTube stars going around Europe testing their popularity. Well, they packed massive venues.
Wow.
It was a huge, I mean, like a shocking level of success. And so that's sort of a testing ground. And I think that in that case, it's more musically oriented. But I think right now it's an interesting time in that everybody is looking at every place, every source for talent, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, whether it's web to TV, cable to feature. We're seeing a lot of this cross-pollination. It's a new sort of. Actually, it's really cool because I think for a time we lost our. The old studio system was about seasoning. It was about doing an actor would do 6 films a year or more. And all of the crafts were tasked in that way. You didn't write a script a year. You wrote 5 scripts a year.
That's right.
Whatever that number was. And I think we're almost recreating a different, smaller version of that by having all these other venues where people can actually create some muscularity and get some seasoning and be observed, witnessed doing their craft, and then being invited into other sandboxes.
Right. And now with production being so inexpensive and the ability to sort of distribute through YouTube, etc., it's a democratizing effect, and it allows people to sidestep the old gatekeepers, which were, I guess, best represented by the studios. So, and then of course, when you talk about those that tour in Europe, Disney bought Makers Studio for $500 million, and that's the YouTube stars, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great question that's come up, if I can bring that forward. But before I bring Justin's question up, I want you both to promise me, Gary and Tom, if you work with Charlie Hunnam, you've got to hire me as the girl making the tea, okay?
Okay. I heard you mention Sons of Anarchy, and Kim Coates on that show is is a golfing buddy of mine. Good friend.
When she takes you to lunch with Charlie, please give me a call. Oh my gosh. I won't stalk, I promise. Okay, so Justin Overlander is asking, really great thing to talk about the industry. Tom, do you have any recommendations on approaching talent for a project? Best to go through agent or better to go through a manager? Or do you need a personal connection to attach names to low budget indies? That's from Justin.
I think it's probably always better to go through a manager, although it really just depends on the manager or agent's relationship with that particular star. So you have to sort of do some research and find out who's more important in that talent's life. Is it his or her manager, agent, best friend, producer? Many stars these days have production deals at a studio, so sometimes it's best to go through their producer and their company rather than to their agent or manager. It really varies.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would agree. One of the little pieces of information that's not that hard to come up with if you go online is their length of stay with a particular agent or a particular manager or a particular attorney, or as Tom says, rightfully so, if they have a production company, whether they have a deal at a studio or not, if they have a legitimate production company, Drew Barrymore's had Flower Films for I don't know how many years. Sandra Bullock, a lot of actors do, and if that's the case, then then obviously whoever's sort of running the show there, and just find out how long they've been in their lives. That gives you a good indication.
Absolutely. Good idea.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Anybody else has questions for either Gary or Tom? Please stream them through. Gary?
Speak now or forever.
Looking back on your career and all the different movies that you've done, was there a moment that you felt, I am in exactly the place I want to be? Were you so content with what you were doing?
Never. Unfortunately, it always felt like I had my eye on what was happening next as opposed to what was happening at the time. Although, obviously if a movie was shooting, I was focused on that. But usually, for a writer, by the time you've written the movie and it's being shot, you've been with that project for years, and you've probably moved on and written 5 other screenplays, and you're in the middle of another one when that one starts shooting. So when Dead Poets Society was shooting, I was there at the set a lot, but I was also working on What About Bob? So it was, you don't get the pleasure of just focusing on one at a time.
And
I didn't anyway.
Is there one that you look back on with particular fondness?
I would say Dead Poets Society was a wonderful experience in the shooting of it. Certainly for me, What About Bob, and my relationship with Laura Ziskin and Alvin Sargent, who wrote the story and Laura produced the movie, we had a great time doing that. So,
where did you film Dead Poets?
Dead Poets was Newcastle, Delaware.
Oh, okay.
St. Andrews was the name of the school.
Okay, Justin saying thank you so much for taking the time to answer. By the way, What About Bob was one of my favorite movies growing up.
Thank you, Justin. But now that he's grown up, he's changed. So.
Okay, we've got another one coming here. Okay, just let me get this one up. No, not that one, sorry. This is from Kathy. Kathy, hi again. I don't have a question this evening, but I do have something interesting for Gary based on his advice. I may not be ready for Matthew McConaughey to beg to star in my film yet, but I did make my brand new 55-year-old jaded doctor cry in less than 3 minutes. She cried until I was left with no option but to hug her. So that's about the movie, the screenplay that she's writing. So I guess that's a good sign. If you make people cry.
There's nothing better. If you can look, that's not just about the story. That touches on something that I think Tom and every other writer knows is gold, which is your ability to move people as an oral storyteller, to move people with a pitch. And if she can walk into a busy doctor's office, good Lord. If you asked me to list my top 10 unfriendly pitch environments, I think a doctor would be in the top 5. So if you can walk into that distracted, crazy, maniacal energy and stop someone dead to the point of emotionally moving them, good on you, Kathy. That's amazing.
I think that's a very good sign. Bodes well for her story.
Absolutely. For her and her story, absolutely.
Yeah.
What would you say, Tom, to people who, like this aspiring writers of whatever maturity, whether they're young or older or just starting, not to give up? Because 5 years can seem a long time to get from a script to a film screen. What would be your advice on that?
Well, it's unfortunately it often takes that long or longer. I think Dallas Buyers Club was decades. Was that 19 years or something? I can't remember. But some of these scripts are just those movies are legendary in their development.
Forrest Gump was like, I don't know, 15 or 13 or.
Jeez.
Yeah. So it's a long game, and you have to write and have something is getting a good response, and then just have the patience to wait it out and be writing something else in the meantime. So I when I first started out, I think I made the mistake of spending a lot of time trying to help my agents sell the scripts that I had written, and instead of spending that time while they were working just writing the next one. But I learned pretty quickly that writing the next one is the important thing, and having 2 or 3 more scripts ready by the time the last one sells or doesn't sell.
Well, that's really interesting because Nancy has an applicable question to that right now. Hi, Nancy. Do you still write scripts, Tom, that you can't sell, or do you not write until you have a buyer for the concept?
Both. I have written I have scripts right now that I can't sell, and sometimes when I've got something that I know is gonna, feels like a good idea, I'll go out and pitch it and try to sell it before I write it. So I sort of try to do it both ways. I try to keep a paying job going while at the same time working on something for myself. I try to do that right on a paying job in the morning and something of my own in the afternoon or night.
Are you a reader too? Do you have a...
No. I was I somewhere back in my early days was a reader for almost a year. Probably read 250 scripts during that time, but I read books. I don't read screenplays.
Okay. We've gotten one. Dallas Buyers Club from Ingrid. Thank you. Took 20 years.
Yep. Okay.
This is not an industry for me. I wouldn't have the patience for that.
Well, I've always felt that one of my least attractive qualities, although I've changed my mind about its attractiveness, is impatience. But I think that all of us in this, whether you're a writer or a producer or whatever hat or hats, plural, you wear, I think impatience is your savior. Even though you can look and say 5 years or 10 years or whatever number of years seems like an intolerable amount of time to wait, you keep yourself busy by shepherding, creating, and being immersed in a number of projects. You may write one at a time, but you're involved in all your projects because even though Tom says there's some that he hasn't been able to sell, they just haven't sold yet. You don't know what the future holds, and that's we have to live on a steady diet of belief that if we're steadfast, eventually our odds go up, not down.
That's right.
And so we work on a multiple of projects. The other thing today that's actually quite different is, you could always go out, you could always find short ends and a camera and a couple of actors, and you could always create a short film or an indie, super low budget, no budget indie film. That's certainly how I started. My first film was $200,000 all in.
Wow.
But and I don't advise it, by the way. Although, interestingly, that was on film, and it was on a Steambox, and it was, that was real filmmaking. Today, in terms of prep, capture, and post, the technology and the costs of doing those different things is, skyrocketed downward, and so that $200,000 film today would be a lot less expensive, I believe. But either way, the point simply being that today people have a little bit more freedom to choose to go out and create their own content. Sort of push the momentum, make it part of your destiny to actually create content and be known as someone who creates content, whether it's feature length or not.
Yeah.
So that's another way to sort of keep busy and productive and create showcase material for yourself that wasn't so easy to do before.
Gary, right. Terry has a question that's just applicable to what you're talking about here. Let me bring this up. Terry Herbert, in 2 days I'll be finishing a rewrite on a film which will probably come in at $3 to $7 million. The film is being funded with an established producer and director. My question is, how can I parlay this in a way to advance my spec scripts? Interesting question.
Well, I'm gonna ask Tom to chime in as well, but I have a very simple philosophy, which is, success in life is all about developing relationships, creating rapport, taking every opportunity to really get to know someone, not necessarily to push a script out across the table and say, here, take a read, but when you're in that kind of an environment, which is really a luxury. To know that you have a funded film with a quality director, quality producer, quality cast, hopefully, and financiers, and so you can imagine you're going to be in the presence of people involved with marketing, with distribution, with who knows what all. I would just say the more people you can really engage, get to know, and exchange information with, develop a real sort of friendly rapport with, and then follow up with them after the film. That would be as high a calling or as good a use of that time as I can imagine.
Yeah. I mean, Hollywood, both TV and film, is a town that responds to heat. And if you've got something that you've just finished that's about to be made, you've got some heat, and heat will help your agents and representatives and you get a sort of more positive read from people who are looking to make other stuff. I mean, it sort of all goes back to a playground mentality. I can remember when my older son was about 4, and he would be on the playground, and there would be, or sitting over in the sandbox, some old toy that the kids haven't played with in weeks, but no one wants it. As soon as one kid goes over and digs it out, they all start fighting over it. So that's basically what goes on in Hollywood. So this person
with the same emotional age.
Exactly. I also noticed that little kids can't say yes for a while. They can only say no, which is also the Hollywood explains why Hollywood says no.
Yeah, but in that that's a great Hollywood is a business and a community that lives and dies by consensus.
Yeah.
And so Tom made a really brilliant point. If you are riding the crest of a wave into production, where that's heat, that's expectation, that's exciting to everybody, because that's where everybody wants to go. That's the end game, right?
That's right.
Get into production. So and nobody knows, the old William Goldman, nobody knows anything. Well,
that's right.
I remember Alan Ladd one day when he was running MGM made a great comment. He was very, very self-deprecating in a way, and he said, if I had greenlit every film that I'd passed on and passed on every film that I'd greenlit, my batting average would probably be about the same. So he was just upholding Goldman's line. Nobody knows anything. Just take your best guess, but let's be honest. Until the audience tells us thumb up or thumb down, we're at their mercy. We do the best that we can do. But you are, Terry, entering into that high-pitched moment, that exciting moment of production. So Tom's right. To the extent that we have talked about, and you've studied it in the course, I know, how important the referral is as a door opener strategy. That would be what I would do, is in the prep period, as you're gaining the trust and getting to know a lot of people, or those that you already have good rapport with, that would be a good time to say, if you, and I'm not sure what representation you have or don't have, but if you are looking for that, that would be a great time to say, and that's when representatives tend to be interested, because suddenly now you represent, there's success, there is the possibility of income, whether it's commissionable or not on that project, you represent the possibility of a working client. So I would be mindful of that as well.
Yeah.
Gary, we've passed our hour. We should untie Tom and let him get back to his typewriter and kids.
I don't know. Should we release him back to his life?
I don't know. We kind of like him, especially with Charlie Hunnam on his mind.
We could just keep him as a breaking the Hollywood jail prisoner.
Well, it's been great fun. I enjoyed this.
Likewise. Thank you a gazillion, Mr. Schulman. A pleasure indeed. And congrats on all this beautiful stuff, and much more to come, I know.
Thank you.
So thank you, and on behalf of everybody listening in.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for having me. It's been really enjoyable. Okay, and good luck, everybody out there. Yeah.
Thanks much.
Okay.
And Bethan, thanks to you for, as always, organizing and producing this seamlessly. Well, with the minor Google glitch, but we got there.
We did.
Any announcements before we leave everybody?
Check in at http right here, breakingintohollywood.com, for any updates, blogs, Facebook pages, Twitter, all on there.
Fabulous. All right, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful night.
And Tom, thank you again. You were fantastic. Lovely.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you. Okay.
Enjoy.
Good night.
Bye-bye.